I have been teaching every day. I've been teaching beginners. Absolutely. So I'll have a class, in the old days we used to get 40 and 50. Now 20 is a big class in this yoga world. And every day there's always new people. And I've had people in my Saturday morning class that have been coming for 28 years. I mean, seriously. Andrew Rock and a number of these others, they're there all the time. And so I've had to find some way to keep the old practitioners engaged and always inviting in new people and making it relatable to them. And so I came up with this version of what we used to do back in the ashram, in Kripalu ashram, back in the 1980s and 1990s. And I've kind of changed it around and updated a little bit. And it's anybody can do it, truly anybody. So the best time to do it is first thing in the morning. So you roll out of bed and you lie on pillows. What could be easier? And so we're passively trying to relax the rib cage and open the body to the breath, because that's the best way, the passive method first. So we relax the rib cage and we want to increase the mobility of our body to breathe. We want to increase lung volume. And then we want to build up, what the yogis called prana, what the Chinese called qi. So it's measurable, it's this electrical, we are bioelectric batteries. And so we can store up this qi in the body. This is what Bruce Lee and all these
right.
Tai Chi masters used to do, and, martial artists, and the yogis did it too. So there is this, this power that can build up in the body. And I mean, I know you've been around somebody who sucks the life out of you and you feel drained 2 minutes in their being with them and you feel exhausted. Well, there's the opposite process too, where you feel really energized and alive, inside. And so that's the way to start the practice every day. And then later on, what happens is you slow the breath down. So this is what makes the yoga tradition different from the Buddhist tradition. So mindfulness practices are really, that part of the Buddhist and yoga traditions, that comes a little later, the meditation part. And so a lot of people skip over breathing practices and they go straight to mindfulness or meditation, and then they hate it. It's like, I can't get my mind to quiet down. I'm so upset, I'm a lawyer, I'm a busy person. I can't, my mind at night just keeps going. It's like, well, these people really need to do the yoga practice, which is breath first, meditation after. And so you get your body going and slowing it down with the breath, charging it up and slowing the breath down. And then all these amazing things happened, which, come directly from the tradition that we were in, the Kripalu tradition. And
well, you know what, Tom, let me interrupt and just say who you are. We jumped right in because you're fascinating. So, and I wanted everybody here. But you guys, this is Tom Gillette, and I'm Deirdre Fay, and some of you know me from Safely Embodied. But I wanted to talk to Tom because I've known him since the 80s, and he is a dedicated yoga practitioner and learned tremendous skills and talents and practices. And I remember when we were training in India, he was doing things that I wouldn't even dream of doing. He was so willing to try out these very esoteric practices and put them into experience in his life and see how they would go. So Tom has been teaching yoga since then, but then he's been in Providence. He has his own yoga studio and finally closed the yoga studios for many reasons. But now he's doing these online courses, especially around pranayama, and that is what I want, breathing practices. And that's what I wanted him to talk to you about. So you heard that whole opening of it. And so, but I wanted you to know about that. And the other thing that I love about Tom is that he takes a lighthearted approach to teaching yoga and being a yogi and practicing. So that's so important for some of us who get pretty heavy about it. Now, a lot of people, Tom, you should know, who work with me or are interested in me, they have either trauma histories or complicated inner worlds where there's a lot of charge. And you know, because you've talked about this a lot, that meditation isn't just about calming the body, it's about charging it up. But let's also, as you're talking, think about, what is it like to practice calming? What's it like then to be able to hold and contain that much intensity in your body, all that energy that starts flowing? And then other ways that we do it. So that's, I think that's where I wanted to start. How's that?
That's great. You know, like, there's lots of ways, and everybody needs to find their way, their method. And I have always found that the breath is the simplest and most direct method, because we all have a breath, and it's universal.
Well, I'm looking for my notes of what. But Tom, I want to ask you about that, because for many people who have a complicated history, the breath is a affect valve. It can turn on or off. So how can we best befriend the breath without being frightened of everything that it pulls up in addition to that?
Well, you know, the problem is people try to control the breath. And in my viewpoint, and in really Kripalu's viewpoint, is controlling the breath is anxiety. It produces anxiety. And so really what we want to do is we want to free up the breath. We want to open up the body so that it can breathe more in a more relaxed way. What happens is mind, breath, and body are all deeply interrelated and connected. And so the mind wants to control life, and so it tightens up around the breath. The body tightens up. And these things go together. And so that's why the method that I found works best is to passively relax the breath first. That is the best way in for a wide spectrum of people. So
I think that's fantastic, right?
You lie on the pillows and you just let go. And you take as much time as you need to just soften into the body and feel the body, and relaxing the mind, relaxing the body, relaxing the breath. They all work together. So, you know, there's an old quote that the breath is a horse upon which the mind rides. It's an old Chinese quote. There's memes all over the web on this one. You know, but so if your breath is galloping, your mind is galloping. If your breath is trotting, your mind is, if the breath is really slow, the horse is very slow. And so we can actually steer the breath a lot easier than we can steer the mind, because the mind is very elusive. There's so many layers to it, and it's very complicated. And working with mind and emotions is very challenging. So the breath is very simple and it's very immediate. Now, a lot of people say that, oh, when I start to observe my breath, I actually get more stressed out. Have you heard that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's very common that people will feel more stressed out if they focus on the breath. So instead of doing the Buddhist practices of mindfulness first, we leave those for later on. First of all, just be with the breath and let the breath be any way it wants to be. You see, this is where Kripalu was a little different than Iyengar and many of those other yogis, which were all around controlling the breath. And controlling the breath is one of the reasons why pranayama is not very loved. No. Free up the breath. Let the breath be however it needs to be, but just stay with it. And
well, you're saying something interesting there, Tom, because if we free up the breath, if somebody is frightened of their inner world and all that it can activate, it's freeing up the breath in a way that you can be with it along the path, right? So it's not like freeing up the breath so it takes over and blows you apart. It's freeing the breath up so that you can walk with it. And that's part of the reason why you're saying doing it in a passive way, so that people can just, instead of trying to force the breath to do anything or change the breath, just be with it first. That's the first step that you're saying.
Absolutely.
And then when
Absolutely.
that breath starts coming up, then what would be the next step for people?
Well, baby steps. So
Right, good.
little tiny baby steps. And that's the only way we can progress at all towards a deeper integration of mind and body and breath, is through small steps. And so what I found was the critical part was the actual practicing, the actual action of practicing every day with your breath was critical to success, because the breath doesn't change very easily. It's very resistant to change. The mind is I mean, we humans, we're very resistant to change.
Never noticed that, Tom, never.
We hate change, and yet change is the most basic part of our existence, you know? So it has to be done every single day, and 5 minutes is good enough, you know? So you don't have to do like an hour, or, you know, like later on, maybe you can build up there, but 5 minutes is good enough. And to make it as simple as possible and still be effective.
That's when I'm looking here at my notes, because you said when you change the breath, you can change your mind.
Yeah, so we can do a very simple experiment.
Good, let's do that.
Okay, so think of a Labrador retriever and stick out your tongue and pant. And immediately, like in 20 seconds, you become anxious. I mean, you become like a Labrador. Your mind is racing, thoughts are racing. Like that's how Labradors are. Like think about how they are. You know?
Right.
They're always like, and so mouth breathing is definitely a huge problem. It's an unrecognized problem that many people have. I certainly have had it. And so learning to breathe through the nostrils is a very important thing. It's so important for our health and our well-being, our mental well-being.
What a great point you're bringing up about, so there's something, and I can't remember it in the scriptures, but there's something about breathing through the nostrils that actually is like a physiological, I don't know, shift changer or something, rather than breathing through the mouth. Is that because we're getting more oxygen in through the mouth, or is it, why would that be? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, there's actually tons of research and science, double blind, you know, controlled testing around the science. And I do have an introductory science page on my website.
Oh, good, Tom. We'll have to put that on so everybody can find that.
But so, you know, the yogis called the body this city that has 9 gates. So there's 9 openings to the outside world: 2 nostrils, 2 eyes, 2 ears, mouth, anus, and a ureter. And how the outside world comes in is basically through the mouth. So there's 2 vehicles. There's food and there's breath. But when the breath comes in through the mouth, when we inhale through the mouth, it goes right into the lungs. And the lungs are not very guarded or protected. The nostrils are very protected. And when we don't use the nostrils, that's when they get clogged up. That's one of the ways they get clogged up, and then they get infected. So we take in all the viruses and mold and bacteria and parasites basically through the mouth. The food goes into an acid bath, and 80% of our immune system is down there protecting us. Okay, it's trying to figure out what is useful and what is an invader, you know, and so our immune system then goes after what it identifies, if it can identify the invaders. But what people don't often know about is the importance of the sinuses. So the sinuses, when they are open, so we have a number of cavities in our skull that are the main producer of nitric oxide. So nitric oxide is a neurotransmitter, and it's a gas. It's used everywhere in the body, and it has some very important functions. First of all, it's a bronchodilator. So it opens and relaxes the lungs, the lung tissue, your ability to breathe. Like an inhaler, like a corticosteroid inhaler, this nitric oxide relaxes your lungs. And usually people who are using inhalers aren't breathing through their nose. So it just goes together. Now, another thing that's really important about nitric oxide is that it's an antibacterial. So it kills 100% of the bacteria coming in. It kills 100% of the viruses. So how do people get the flu? It's not because they're breathing through their nose, it's because they're breathing through their mouth. It kills all the mold. People say, oh, I have a mold problem. It's like, well, if your sinuses are really active and efficient and they're really working, it'll kill 100% of the mold. And, it's not to say that living in a toxic environment is a good thing. I'm not saying.
Right, for sure.
We do what we can. But you activate these sinuses through a daily breath practice. And this nitric oxide will smell like really clean air when it starts to flow. And then it has this profound global effect on the body. So it repairs our arteries and our veins. So it not only cleans the blood, but it has this protective ability it cleans plaque, for one thing. And so when you get your nitric oxide flowing, right, it goes right up into your brain. It goes right up in your brain. This clean blood is cleaning and repairing your arteries. It also cleans and protects the heart as well. So people who have heart conditions will take nitroglycerin. It's the same process. This nitric oxide works through the same methods. So repairing heart tissue. And then every part of the body uses nitric oxide. So the brain, the gut, liver, lungs, kidneys. So lungs relax, and it's a vasodilator. So all the arteries and veins relax and open. Then what happens is the body becomes very relaxed naturally. And the breath starts to slow down. And when the breath slows down, then the mind slows down. And then meditation happens organically and naturally, not because you're trying to will it to happen or using your intellect or your mind to make it happen. It's like it just happens spontaneously. And this was...
what's so good about what you're saying is you're reinforcing the need for people to slow down. And that I love the points you're making, to slow down and then to help the body to keep slowing down. And that then the natural wisdom arises from within, and that we're not having to do any, and we have to exert, but it doesn't have to be forced on us, or it's not, like you said earlier, a control. So I think that's going to be so helpful for people to hear.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And, the only part we have to do is we have to show up. I mean, that's really it. We show up for ourselves, and we show up for the very next breath that's happening. And that's all there really is this moment and this next arising breath. And, the beautiful thing about the breath is that it teaches us. It teaches us about the mind, and it teaches us about our emotions. It teaches us about the body.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah. So for example, like I do a lot of yoga poses. So you bring your arm up and you come into a stretch, and suddenly all these unpleasant sensations, like immediately.
Right.
And so if you tighten your breath, the sensations get worse, right? So you relax and you try to expand and open and soften breath by breath. And it's like, oh, the situation gets better. Now, so I have a free course, as you know, online, and we add a hum to it. And we found that the hum is very helpful for lengthening the exhale. And when you lengthen the exhale, you'll get a much longer exhale if you hum than if you just breathe.
Oh, that's awesome. I haven't noticed that. That's terrific.
Now, the long exhale is the simplest way to increase vagal tone. Now, increasing vagal tone is this big, big, big topic these days. And increasing the vagal tone. So the vagus nerve travels through all the body and it connects all the organs. So the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, our gut, they're all connected by the reptilian brain, the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, and they're all wired together. And when you do a long exhale, it increases vagal tone. And what that means is it has an inhibitory effect, and it brings all of the organs into synchronicity, into a balance. And it's so simple. Like anybody can hum, really.
Right.
It's the simplest thing possible. And it aids with depression. So depression is an epidemic. I mean, all of us every day, we're scared of our sad mind states, essentially. And okay, let's come to the next breath. Let's do a little hum together. You know, and then so check it out. It's, you know, I've been working with Butler Hospital and Brown University and Rhode Island Hospital, and now we've got a breath project with Harvard. So I've been involved in breath and yoga research now for 11 years now. We've done the largest study of yoga for depression. We had 150 people, and we took them for 5 years and tracked them.
Fabulous. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, largest NIH-funded study. We did one yoga for bipolar. We did one yoga for pain management.
Well, that's what that. Before we end, actually wanted to. That was one thing I wanted to talk to you about is reducing pain, because so many people have inflammation in their bodies and suffer with different forms of pain, physical pain. And that's what you're finding in the research you're involved in, is that is very helpful then.
The breath, well, you think of a woman in labor. You know, all my moms come back and they say, oh, thank God for yoga. Oh my God. If it weren't for the breath, I never would have gotten through childbirth. And, you know, so we know at a very primitive level that the breath has this ability to reduce pain. So when we make our inhale longer, it increases pain. When we make our exhale longer, it decreases pain. It's how the body is wired.
Wow, I know immediately who I'm going to send this to.
Yeah, so, but it really is training. It's, you know, you have to train yourself every single day and just show up for yourself. You know, let go of expectations of what's going to happen, and you don't have to control anything. Like, just be happy, be like a kid at the playground, and just hum.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It just works, and you know, everyone can do this.
All right.
You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be flexible. You don't have to do arm balances or headstands or anything like that. You know, like just start every day while you're still sleepy. You know, while you're kind of in that state of not really awake. You're in that in-between state of consciousness. That's the great place to be. And you just start with the very next breath, and you know, start. You know, you'll find you'll be more awake, you're more alert, you move through your day much more easily, and life kind of starts to flow. And it's not quite so serious.
I love that. That gives people such an opening. So thank you, Tom. And I'm going to make sure that everybody has your website so that they can come and see what you're doing and learn from you, because just having that and that non-serious is so important for so many people. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Deirdre. It's been so fun to reconnect. And tell me when you're in Boston. We'll come up and do a lunch sometime.
Great. I would love that.